What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, covering your Kansas City Chiefs. And Chiefs fans got an interesting piece of news on defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo on Wednesday afternoon when it was reported by Mike Garafolo of NFL Network that the Jets are requesting to interview with Chiefs DC Steve Spagnuolo for their head coaching spot, source said. The two-time Giants DC and interim head coach will discuss a potential return to Jersey. And then Ian Rappaport of NFL Network followed up that report by saying that the Raiders have also requested to speak with Chiefs DC Steve Spagnuolo, sources said. Two so far for him. So Steve Spagnuolo, after several years of kind of flying under the radar as defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, is finally getting head coach interviews this time around for a couple of different teams. And at this point, I would suspect that he'll probably get a few more interviews with some different teams, as once you get an interview or two, more teams are likely to interview you and see what's going on there. But this is interesting because Steve Spagnuolo was a guy that for years, had a stable job in Kansas City, and over the last couple of years, Kansas City has had one of the best defenses in the NFL, but you never really heard of Steve Spagnuolo ever getting any head coach interest or opportunities. And it was always kind of strange because everyone always talked about how great Steve Spagnuolo was on the Kansas City Chiefs and praised the job that he has done, yet nobody wanted him to be their head coach. And Steve Spagnuolo has been asked several times in the past whether or not he'd ever be interested in becoming a head coach again, and he has pretty much said every time that he would like to be a head coach again at some point in his career coaching NFL football. But one thing that I think has held him back is that he did get a head coaching opportunity at one point with the St. Louis Rams, and it did not go very well at all. Now, I've always been of the belief that he failed in St. Louis because of a lot of factors beyond his control. That was not a well-run organization at the time Steve Spagnuolo got a shot there. And you've seen a lot of guys that are probably less qualified than Steve Spagnuolo to be a head coach, and yet they were getting opportunities before him. But nonetheless, here we are now, and Spags finally seems to be getting that time of day from NFL organizations. And I have a few thoughts on it because Michael Darcy and I actually discussed this heavily last night in our live Q&A when a lot of you asked about Steve Spagnuolo and whether or not he'd ever become a head coach again. And as far as Spags becoming a head coach, I don't know for sure, if he'll end up getting hired anywhere, but I have always said that I don't think Spags would actually make a good head coach, and there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, I think a lot of his personnel decisions have hurt him along the way. Even if his defense is good now, some of his personnel decisions just do not line up with the modern game. Joshua Uche is one that we've talked about a lot this year on this channel because I just think it's inexcusable for him to be inactive when this team lacks a speed rushing threat from the edge. Michael Darcy and I talked about this last night. I mean, you can go back to the 2021 season when he had Dan Sorensen, the corpse of Dan Sorensen, in there over Juan Thornhill when it was obvious that Thornhill should have been playing. I think Spags' defensive scheme is actually quite outdated in today's NFL game, but when he gets the perfect personnel to run it, which he has been able to get that in Kansas City over time, and Brett Veach adding pieces, Spags has the guys that he likes, and he's been able to make an impressive defensive unit, and I give him credit for that. But I think his form of edge rusher on the defensive line, his prototype on the defensive line is not one that fits the modern game. He just does not have enough speed on the defensive line. A lot of his coverages are extremely difficult for DBs to understand, and he's gotten the guys in Kansas City to get it down now to this point, and that's awesome. But there was like a 3 or 4 year stretch with Spags as the defensive coordinator where they were not that great. He was still building this thing up there for a while, and I don't think he would be given that long of a leash as a head coach if it takes him that long to get his team up to speed. But, I mean, he had a slow start as a defensive coordinator even. The Chiefs' defense was good enough to win a Super Bowl whenever Spags first joined the coaching staff because the bar was Bob Sutton. And as long as they cleared that bar, we all said they'd have a chance. Well, he cleared that bar and they won the Super Bowl, but there was a while there when Steve Spagnuolo's defenses, if you got in the red zone against them, you were scoring. The red zone defense was terrible. Now, I don't mean to dump on Spags this entire episode because I think he's a good defensive coordinator. The ultimate point that I was going to make is that I think he's perfectly fine where he's at. He's a good defensive coordinator. He will potentially be the first defensive coordinator to go to the Hall of Fame for the job that he's done. He's just been that good and that consistent with the Kansas City Chiefs. And so, I just would hate to see him go to a head coaching position like the Jets or the Raiders where he's really not set up for success and just end up getting fired in a couple of years. The Raiders, I just don't see him succeeding there, especially being in the division still with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. I don't see that being a situation where Steve Spagnuolo will succeed. You have to get him out of the division for him to even have a chance. And then secondly, with the Jets, they seem like a dumpster fire right now. They don't really have a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is completely washed up. So those are not positions that are all that desirable. But unfortunately for Steve Spagnuolo, he may not really have his pick of the litter. He's not the hottest coaching candidate. So if he wants to be a head coach, this might be his chance and he needs to take it. But I really hope that we see him remain defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs because I think he's built a good home here. This defense has his fingerprints all over it. So I just think that you would see him really struggle if he were to go somewhere else and start all over and try to implement his defense. And I'm not sure he would be given long enough of a leash to be able to get that team up to his standard. So I'm glad that Steve Spagnuolo is finally getting that recognition that he deserves by getting head coaching looks, because if you just look at what he's done and also the other candidates that have been interviewed by other teams over the years, Steve Spagnuolo seems a little overqualified to be a head coach. But at the same time, I don't really think he'd make a good head coach. I think the game has passed him by just a little bit as far as being a head coach. I just think he's best suited as the Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator. And why ruin the good thing that you already have going? And, the way that this organization has treated you, you basically have a job for life. We know how Andy Reid is very loyal to his assistant coaches. So I just would prefer to see Spags stay, and I would also hate to see him go to a dead-end spot like a Raiders or a Jets team that just has no hope as of right now. I don't think that's the job for Spags. I think the best chance for Spags to succeed is a place that already has a quarterback and an offensive identity already installed, and then his job is just going to be the defensive coordinator essentially standing in as head coach, and he's like the head coach of the defense and the offensive coordinator is the head coach of the offense. I think that would be Spags' best bet, but that's not happening with the Jets or the Raiders. So those are my thoughts on Steve Spagnuolo getting head coaching interest. A little bit surprising that he's finally getting interviews, but I want to hear from you guys down in the comments below. What are your thoughts on Steve Spagnuolo getting interviews for head coaching jobs? Would you like to see him go and get a head coaching position, or do you think that he is best suited as the Chiefs defensive coordinator? Would like to hear from you guys. So all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com for more. But that's all I got for this one. I'll see you guys in the next episode. And as always, go Chiefs.